In Cape Fear, Nick Nolte stars as attorney Sam Bowden, who is living the good life, as he has a good job and a nice family and home. However, his world is about to be turned upside down when former prisoner and violent criminal Max Cady, played by Robert De Niro, enters his life, determined to completely destroy Sam's world and turn it upside down. Sam was responsible for Max's incarceration, and now he wants revenge. At first, the harassment starts with a few pranks here and there, but things very quickly spiral out of control as it becomes clear that Max is extremely dangerous and impossible to stop. Sam tries to outrun and hide from the violent, brutal ways of Max, but eventually, his past will catch up with him. This is probably Robert De Niro at his most terrifying as Max Cady, a character that you really don't want on your back. So with that, 10 things that you didn't know about Cape Fear. Let's check it out. Number 10, based off a book. Cape Fear is based off a 1957 book called The Executioners, written by author John D. MacDonald, who had previously written short crime stories for pulp magazines like Detective Tales. Now, the book has the basic same plot as the two movies which succeeded it. A violent abuser called Max Cady is released from jail, where he taunts the Bowden family, as he blames attorney Sam Bowden for his incarceration. Now, there are several differences though. In the Cape Fear movie, the Bowden family is made up of Sam, Lee, and teenage daughter Danielle. In the book, the family is larger, with Sam, his wife who in the book is called Carol, teenage daughter who in the book is called Nancy, and two sons called Bucky and Jamie. In the movie, it's explained that Sam got Cady incarcerated by hiding evidence in a case that involved the attack of a young girl, evidence that might have lessened the duration of him being incarcerated. In the book, Sam actually saw the assault take place, in which it happened during World War II, when Max was stationed in Australia, of all places, where Sam acts as a witness in a trial. What I find to be the most interesting factor about the book is Max Cady suffers from what's called combat fatigue, which he got from fighting in World War II, which could be why Cady behaves the way that he does. You know, like a total creepy jerk. Yeah, Max Cady's an asshole. The book was shocking and violent, and it was just a matter of time until a movie about it would be made. And one came sooner than expected. Number 9. Then there was a 1962 movie. So in 1962, 5 years after the release of The Executioners, a movie adaptation was made, which was called, well, Cape Fear. This haunting black and white feature saw Gregory Peck as Sam Bowden and Robert Mitchum as Max Cady. The rights of the book were purchased by Gregory Peck's production company, and the movie was directed by J. Lee Thompson, as he had previously worked with Gregory Peck in The Guns of Navarone, and Peck was impressed with his work. When it came to directing Cape Fear, Thompson took heavy inspiration from Alfred Hitchcock, particularly in the way of camera angles, lighting, and an insistence of filming in black and white, as Hitchcock had done with Psycho. The movie was even scored by Hitchcock regular Bernard Herrmann. There are actually elements created for the 1962 movie that would be recycled for the 1991 remake, such as the introduction of the Cape Fear River, as well as the houseboat, the Bowden family being a 3-person unit, completely removing the two Bowden sons out of the story, and of course Bernard Herrmann's terrifying score, which would be reused for the remake. Also, both Robert Mitchum and Gregory Peck would star in the remake, but have a sort of hero-to-villain reversal, as Mitchum starred as a detective trying to help Sam, and Peck starred as a sleazy lawyer trying to help Max Cady. What a twist, huh? I bet you didn't see that one coming. I sure as heck didn't. It reminds me back in the day when... Okay, I'll get on with it, Number 8. Steven Spielberg was originally going to direct CapeFear. The original CapeFear was a success, although in its time it was considered a very disturbing movie, with it even gaining an X rating in Britain. And so, with the passing of time, it became more of a classic, so Universal Pictures were planning an updated version. The main man who was pioneering the CapeFear remake was Steven Spielberg. Now, there are two reasons given to Spielberg eventually cutting ties with the movie. One being that Spielberg thought that it was too violent for his usual crowd-pleasing formula. Which, yeah, I guess does make sense, but I don't know. Many of his movies like Jaws, Poltergeist, Gremlins, and the Indiana Jones movies would often have very violent and sadistic scenes thrown in them while still being mainstream hits. The other reason given, and the one that I think is more accurate, is that Spielberg really wanted to direct a movie based on Schindler's Ark, which would become Schindler's List, and in those early days of production, the project was in the hands of the legendary Martin Scorsese. So Spielberg suggested a trade, that being that Scorsese passes the Schindler's List production onto him, and in return, Scorsese can direct CapeFear. And thankfully for all involved, Scorsese agreed. After all, if there's one person who can live up to the story's violence, it's the director of Taxi Driver and Goodfellas. However, Spielberg still stuck around as producer, along with his Amblin company, but he requested not to be added to the movie's credits. Okay, maybe he really was scared of the movie's violence. And Scorsese chose to direct CapeFear as sort of a thank you to Universal Pictures for them supporting his movie The Last Temptation of Christ, which got a lot of flack upon its release. Number 7. Casting possibilities. You'll be surprised with this one. So when it came to the casting of the two main leads of Sam Bowden and Max Cady, Scorsese's original choice was Harrison Ford to play Sam Bowden. Now, Ford did want to star in the movie, but not as Bowden. He wanted to star as the villainous Cady, which I don't know. I just can't see Ford being scary and villainous. He's just too, Indiana Solo. Look, who knows, maybe he could have pulled it off. Either way, Scorsese wasn't buying it. Actor Nick Nolte got wind of the production and really wanted to star as Bowden, and managed to convince Scorsese to cast him in the part. I guess it helped that the two previously worked together on a movie called New York Stories. And that's a story I've never heard of. According to Wikipedia, Spielberg's original choice for Cady was Bill Murray, and I can actually really see that happening. However, Scorsese turned to his usual go-to actor, Robert De Niro, making CapeFear the actor and director's 7th collaboration. There was just one issue with this casting though. Nick Nolte was taller than Robert De Niro, and probably looked like he could have kicked his ass. So to fix this up, Nolte lost a heap of weight, giving him a more skinny frame, where De Niro did the opposite and really bulked up on muscle. And it worked! De Niro always scares the crap out of me in CapeFear, and he does look like an unstoppable ball of muscle that's gonna beat you up and ruin your day. Ugh. Number 6, and the rest of the cast. Both Reese Witherspoon and Drew Barrymore auditioned to play teenage daughter Danielle Bowden. Apparently both auditions were a disaster, with Witherspoon admitting that it was her only second acting audition, and that when she went to the audition, she was told that she'll be auditioning alongside Robert De Niro, but she wasn't familiar with his name. But when she saw De Niro, she instantly recognized him, and she apparently just lost it, and in her audition she was shaking and blubbering. I guess she was really starstruck. Barrymore, on the other hand, admitted that for her audition, her acting was just all over the place. So regardless, neither actress was cast. Instead, the part went to From Dusk Till Dawn actress Juliette Lewis. Jessica Lange was cast as Sam's wife, Lee Bowden. Joe Don Baker played the Pepto-Bismol scuzzling private investigator. And actress Alina Douglas played the tragic Laurie, who Sam may or may not be having an affair with, who suffers a truly gruesome and horrific fate at the hands of Max Cady, in a really, really icky scene. She was actually Scorsese's girlfriend at the time, and somehow knowing that just makes this scene even more icky and disturbing. Ugh. Number 5. De Niro went all out with his character, and it even scared Martin Scorsese. So it goes without saying that when it came to Max Cady, Robert De Niro really went the extra mile. Not only was he constantly working out, as mentioned, with him working out 5 hours a day, he also paid a dentist to grind his teeth down in order to make him look more menacing and freaky deaky. Wow! And then there's the character's voice. De Niro decided to give Max Cady a southern accent, of which, according to 80skids.com, may have been the final straw for director Martin Scorsese. De Niro was so hell-bent on getting the accent right, he visited the Deep South and would record conversations between the locals so he could listen back over the conversations and learn from their vocal way of talking. And Scorsese was worried that De Niro's maniacal southern accent may have been a little bit too much in the creepy factor. Once again, according to 80skids.com, De Niro would even call Scorsese and leave him really frightening, creepy messages on his voice answering machine in character as Cady, using his voice and all. Oh my god, imagine waking up to those voice messages. Ugh. And, well, it really paid off, as De Niro is terrifying and really creepy in Cape Fear. In fact, I would say Cape Fear is De Niro at his most menacing and threatening. Number 4. Bad weather got in the way of filming. Cape Fear's script was written by Wesley Strick, who would also do writing work for Arachnophobia and Batman Returns. When it came to filming, despite being set in North Carolina, Cape Fear was filmed on location in Florida, particularly Fort Lauderdale and the Everglades. Now, the movie's climax swamp scene was actually filmed at a real swamp, which was located at a state park in Florida, namely John U. Lloyd State Park. However, filming the swamp scene ended up being a real hassle due to extremely bad weather, which brought the filming to a delay. Finally, after several days, the bad weather subsided. However, despite the swamp being real, all the scenes involving the houseboat were filmed on a set, namely a big water tank that was built specifically for filming Cape Fear, with rain machines also being used to create the environment that the filmmakers wanted to display. According to producer Barbara D. Finner, despite the water tanks costing so much, the tanks were built so the cast and crew wouldn't have to worry about concerns involving real bad weather and alligators. When you think about it, that's fair enough. Number 3. The movie's intro was recycled from another movie. Just like the 1962 original, the production crew wanted to pay homage to Alfred Hitchcock, and for Cape Fear 1991 to use his visual styles. So much so, the movie's title sequence was designed by Sol Bass, who worked on other Hitchcock movies, including making the iconic title sequence for Psycho. Now, I love this movie's title sequence. It's threatening and imposing and sets the mood and tone of the movie, but it's also very surreal and dreamlike, like you've just left reality and you are now entering a nightmare realm. Well, some parts of this sequence was unused footage for a 1974 science fiction horror movie that Sol Bass had directed, called Phase 4. Yep, the title sequence in Cape Fear was in part recycled from another movie. Wow. And this isn't the only cameo another movie would make in Cape Fear. Remember the movie theatre scene where Cady is laughing his ass off while chomping on a cigar, trying to really ruin the movie for the Bowdens? Well, that movie was Problem Child, which, like Cape Fear, was also a Universal Pictures release, and thus they wouldn't have had to pay for the rights to use that film. Problem Child also would have been in theatres at the time of shooting Cape Fear, or at least in the later days of production. So that's some nice, sneaky little bit of advertising for Problem Child that Universal snuck in there. Credit to them. But this borrowing from other movies doesn't end there. Number 2. The music is a mishmash of other scores. So the intense music for Cape Fear was composed by Elmer Bernstein, who in that later part of his career was mainly scoring comedy classics like Animal House, Airplane, and Ghostbusters. As mentioned, when it came to scoring Cape Fear, he recycled Bernard Herrmann's original theme, but added more intensity to give it a modern sound. This is because when Bernstein came to score the music for the movie, he fell into a deep depression due to the subject matter of the movie. Hey, I guess at that stage, he was just really used to scoring comedies. so he just rescored the original theme. And in order to score parts of the movie that were original to the remake version that Herman didn't score for the 1962 version, Bernstein used unused pieces of music that Herman had created for the Alfred Hitchcock movie Torn Curtain. So the score in the 1991 Cape Fear is kind of like a Frankenstein mishmash creation. Bernstein himself said that Herman would have hated the idea of his music to be chopped up and reused like that. But to be fair, the music in the 1991 version does flawlessly go with the film, so clearly Bernstein did know what he was doing and wasn't being some kind of musical mad scientist. Number 1. Robert De Niro and Juliette Lewis nominated for Academy Awards for being awesome. Cape Fear terrified audiences when it was released in November 1991 and made over $182 million on a $35 million budget, making it a huge box office hit. The movie had fought off Curly Sue and Beauty and the Beast to the race to the number 1 spot in the box office, and it would only eventually get taken over by the Addams Family movie. Cape Fear 1991 also got positive feedback. So much so, both Robert De Niro and Juliette Lewis were nominated for Academy Awards and a Golden Globe for their performances in Cape Fear. Cape Fear would very quickly become a cult classic, to the point where just 2 years later it was parodied in The Simpsons, in what is now considered a classic itself, which featured Sideshow Bob, who in Cape Fear fashion is seeking revenge on Bart Simpson. Basically, the 1991 version of Cape Fear does what a remake should do. It retells a story in a compelling way, while adding new twists and elements and intensities. In this case, the complexities of being good and bad characters. In the original Cape Fear, Sam Bowden was the hero and Max Cady was the villain. Simple as that. But this time, Sam is shown to be slightly corrupt and maybe even a cheat. He is deeply flawed, which adds interesting layers to the ordeal, and it also adds more subtext to Max's words of teaching him about loss, and, well, generally teaching him a lesson, I guess. I can remember watching Cape Fear for the very first time, and being really creeped out and disturbed by it. And even now, over 30 years later, the scene where Max attacks the Laurie character is really hard to sit through, and a scene that I found really upsetting. But that said, Cape Fear is a very powerful thriller. One that doesn't hold back its punches. One that tells a very scary story about the demons of our pasts coming back to haunt us and ruin our lives. And what's more terrifying than that? Cape Fear is a great movie that has really aged very well. However, if you do watch it, just have a strong stomach ready to digest some of the movie's more shocking elements. Anyway, I'm Minty, and I think that Robert De Niro is the only actor in history to actually pay a dentist to grind his teeth down for a film role. See ya!